So, today we're going to be looking at some of the battles involved in the American Civil War. We're going to start by looking at two of those battles. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about them. Not a whole lot. We're not going to look at troop movements and different weapons and all of that stuff. We're not going to get into that much detail, but I am confident that you will learn something and that you will be able to reach our learning target. So, for today, our learning target is I can describe the significance of the battles of Bull Run and Antietam. I know it looks like it says Antietam, but it's not, it's Antietam. So we're asking you to describe why something is significant. So how do you know if something's significant? Well, if the results are really astounding or important, then that would be significant. Or if something changes as a result. So throughout our examination of these two battles, we're going to be looking at the significance of those battles. Why these two battles to start with? Hopefully by the end, you'll have an answer to that question. So most Northerners at the beginning of the war, they think that this is going to be a very brief war. It's not going to last very long. They see themselves as being far more equipped. They have a moral high ground in their opinion, and they feel essentially that the South doesn't stand a chance. General Winfield Scott is the commander who's in charge of planning the Union strategy, and this is called the Anaconda Plan. It's called the Anaconda Plan after the snake, which wraps itself around its prey and crushes it. So he says that what we need to do is first cut off the South's ability to trade. That cuts off their financial support, and hopefully then this should be pretty fast. Then they are going to capture strategic locations along the Mississippi River. And I have a map. It's in the wrong place because I made a mistake. But if you take a look, all of this dark gray here is the Confederacy. Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, and Oklahoma are states that have slavery in some way, but haven't joined the Confederacy. And that's going to come back later. So remember that. So the Anaconda Plan, they're going to create a naval blockade. So the Union is going to put ships all here to block Southern ships from being able to do trade. And then they want to use control of the Mississippi River to break the Confederacy into two pieces so that we can divide and conquer. But a lot of the fighting is happening over here. We're going to talk a lot about Richmond here today, too. So we're going to start by looking at the Battle of Bull Run. And this is a painting, but this is a photograph, which one of the really amazing things about the Civil War is that photography is just starting during this time. So we have much more information about the Civil War than we had in any other war. There were no cameras at the Revolution, but there's cameras during the Civil War. And this is a family, they're actually on a picnic. It was very common for families or whole towns basically to picnic on the hills nearby where a battle was going on, and they would watch the battle like entertainment. So this is happening in July of 1861, and Union soldiers are pushing towards Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the Confederacy. And right off the bat, it looks like a Union victory. The Union is very confident in their ability to quickly subdue the Confederacy. However, the Confederates have much more experience as soldiers, not because they've been to war against other Americans before, but because the South has much more of a military tradition. Most of the soldiers who are in leadership roles in the South attended what is now West Point, the Army College. So the Confederates, they hold their line, and we're still at a point where, in terms of tactics, it's basically like lining up and shooting at each other from not very far away. There's a little bit of change there, but for the most part, it's basically that. They hold their line till reinforcements come, and when the reinforcements arrive, the Confederates charge the Union line, and they overwhelm the inexperienced Union soldiers. So the result is it's a victory for the South, and it's a very early victory. Looks good. Good for morale, gets everybody excited. It's a big loss for the North. And the significance is that it showed the North that the war wasn't going to be as easy or as short as they thought it was going to be. By this point, the Union Army has succeeded in blocking the South's trade. The South, during this period, obviously, we know that they're growing cotton, and what they're doing, they don't actually do any of the processing. They don't turn the cotton into clothing or linen. They export cotton other places to the north or to Britain and France for the cotton, the raw material, to be made into a product. So once the Anaconda Plan has been put into place, the Union Army has succeeded in blocking Southern trade by sea. The South depends on being able to export cotton to Britain and France. I know that I already said that, sorry. So the Union is going to start working toward making sure that they have control of the Mississippi. And by this point, Union soldiers under General Ulysses S. Grant have taken over control of almost all of Kentucky and Tennessee. And Union soldiers under General George McClellan are sent to capture Richmond, which is the capital of the Confederacy, but they fail to do so. Now, fast forward, we're talking about the Battle of Antietam. This takes place in September 1862, and General Robert E. Lee, who's the commander of the Confederate forces, he's pushing into Maryland. Maryland is a slave state, but it remained part of the Union. So Lee's hope is that a Confederate victory that takes place in Maryland will convince them to leave the Union and join the Confederacy. Union and Confederate troops meet at Sharpsburg, which is along Antietam Creek. That's where it gets its name. It is a long and bloody battle. The Union does claim victory after Lee and his men retreat back into Virginia. And I have a map to hopefully help you understand that a little bit better geographically. It is the single bloodiest day in the Civil War. Union casualties, they had 75,000 fighting men that day. Of that, 2,000 men were killed and 10,000 were wounded. The Confederates, they had 52,000 men that day. Almost 3,000 died and 11,000 were wounded. So I have a map here. In this picture, the long one here, if you don't want to look at it, that's okay. It does have dead bodies in it. Antietam was a very well photographed battle. And there are a lot of really famous photographs from the Civil War. There was a whole business essentially that popped up to sell these pictures. So focus here on the map. So this is the border between Maryland and Virginia. So when we're talking about a retreat back into Virginia, they're basically just like crossing over the river, but it's a huge win for the Union. So the result of the Battle of Antietam, it's a hard-won victory for the North. It's a tough retreat for the South. Sorry. And it's the bloodiest single day in the American Civil War. One of the most challenging things about injuries during the Civil War is that medical care for wounds wasn't very advanced. Often, they would just amputate or remove the wounded portion. If we were in class, I'd be able to show you because I have some Civil War bullets that are from the Battle of Gettysburg that came out of the battlefield. Super cool. They're very heavy, and they weren't like what you see on TV or something now. They didn't pass through the body. They would strike the body, break the bone, and get stuck. So because medically we didn't know very much about infection at that time, your best case scenario was just to lop it off. 3 men out of every 1 man who died in battle, 3 men died of infection or disease. So throughout the Civil War, there's a lot of changes that will need to come about in terms of medicine. The American Red Cross is founded, women become involved. So there is a lot of significance, wink, that comes out of that part as well. So the Battle of Antietam, result and significance, bloodiest single day in the American Civil War. How do you know if something is significant? What are the results and what changes as a result? So stop and think about that. And if you need to, go back and find the answers in the video.